As MVC projects grow in size, we can end up with large monolithic applications. One giant folder with dozens of handlers, an equally large views folder with many different templates, and the same problem for models and even layouts possibly. While it's good that we're using the MVC pattern in these applications, trying to find one handler among a folder of, say, 100 CFCs can be an unpleasant experience, to say the least. In addition to that, let's say we have 5 applications at our company, and each of them have similar pieces of functionality, perhaps a security permissions dashboard, for example, where we can assign users different levels of access in that application, manage their accounts, reset their passwords, and so on. That's pretty common functionality that we might need to duplicate in our other applications as well. Rather than having to maintain 5 different security sections of 5 different applications, wouldn't it be great if we could drop one canned solution into each of those 5 apps, one module, if you will, that's its own standalone library that does the security and permissions functionality that we need, the same way we can drop libraries like jQuery or Bootstrap into our projects. You can do exactly that in CFML with the help of Coldbox modules. Modules are fully formed MVC applications that can be dropped into a parent or host application, thus giving us the functionality we need in a reusable, shareable Coldbox application. There's no limit to how many Coldbox modules we can install in our applications. If we have, for example, 10 canned modules of functionality that we need, we can install all 10 into our application, thus having 11 separate modules all working together, the host application plus the 10 modules that we installed. This idea of having several MVC applications all linked together into a hierarchy is called, you guessed it, Hierarchical Model View Controller, or HMVC for short. So why use modules? Well, it's simple really. We get reusable functionality for all of our Coldbox applications, and because modules are themselves just Coldbox applications, no matter how many modules you install, and no matter who wrote the original modules, they'll all behave the exact same way, using the same MVC pattern, the same naming conventions, and so on. If you've ever downloaded someone else's open source app off the web, you know there can be a bit of a learning curve, going through the code, seeing how things are wired together, perhaps even having to learn some sort of homegrown framework that really just ends up getting in your way more often than not and slowing you down. With modules and the HMVC pattern, these problems go away, but you still get the same benefits of downloading a reusable app off the web. And because these apps or modules all follow the same pattern, you get the good parts of reusability, and those unknowns about someone else's code get lessened quite a bit. Okay, now we're sold on using modules and HMVC, right? But where do we get these modules? Well, you can build the modules yourself if need be. After all, they're just Coldbox applications. But there are also a number of free modules available on forgebox.io, the official Ortus repository. You can browse forgebox.io, and you'll see a variety of modules readily available, courtesy of the CFML community. Each module has an installation tab where you can see the instructions on how to download and configure the module. For instance, here's the CB Commons module, and you can see there's the installation tab right there with the instructions on how you would install that using CommandBox. This is just one of the places where CommandBox and ForgeBox are real time savers. Instead of downloading a zip, unpacking it, running some scripts, maybe editing an XML file, and all the other steps we used to have to do for installing software, now we would simply do this: box install CB Commons. And that's it. Boom, done. You type install, the package slug, and you're finished. CommandBox and ForgeBox take care of the rest. The module is now downloaded and installed for you. In fact, let's take a look at that right now. I'm going to go ahead and run that command, box install CB Commons. That command is going to go out to the ForgeBox repository, downloads the CB Commons module for me, loads it up, and makes it available in my Coldbox application. Let's switch back over to my editor. And you can see here, I have 2 folders, modules and modules app. And inside modules, now there is a CB Commons folder with all of the documentation, code, configuration, README, changelog, and everything else that came down from the ForgeBox repository available here for me to use in my application. I didn't have to unzip anything. I didn't have to configure an XML file or do any of the other typical steps you do when setting up an open source app off the web. I simply typed box install, the package slug name, and it dropped it here into my modules folder for me. Notice how we have 2 folders here, modules and modules app. Modules is where the CB Commons module was added from CommandBox and ForgeBox.io. Modules app is currently basically empty. It's got this placeholder text file here that was created for us when we ran the Coalbox create app command at the very beginning of this project, just to create our scaffolding and all of the default files from Coalbox. But really, it's an empty folder. So modules has CB Commons in it. Modules app is currently empty. Modules is the folder where any modules that you download from the ForgeBox.io repository will get installed. Those all go into modules here by themselves. Modules app is for modules that you and your development team create and maintain themselves. So say you have a module that isn't an open source publicly available thing out on the web. It's something that maybe one of your development teams in the office has built internally. You want to reuse it across applications, thus making it a module, but it's not something you want to just throw out on the web and make an open source, application out of for the rest of the world to have. Maybe it's got proprietary information in it about your company or whatever, reasons you have. You can keep that as your own module internally and simply put it in the modules app folder instead of the modules folder. And Coalbox will keep them separate for you. You have a spot to put your ForgeBox.io modules, and you have a spot to put your custom internal modules as well. They work the exact same way. It's just a naming convention so you can keep track of which modules are your internal ones and which ones came from the Ortus repository. If you want to see all the modules available on ForgeBox that might be of use to you, you can browse ForgeBox.io in your browser, or you can also type ForgeBox show at the command prompt in CommandBox, and that will show you all of the same information that browsing ForgeBox.io would show you. The ForgeBox show command automatically contacts the ForgeBox.io website, so all the info in this command is just as current as the info would be on the website. They're always in sync. Uninstalling modules is just as easy as installing them. Simply type uninstall, the package name, wait a few seconds, and poof, your modules folder is back the way it was before we installed CB Commons. As you can see, we've gotten rid of several tedious steps when it comes to reusable software. Now with CommandBox, ForgeBox, and modules, you get a much more streamlined approach to reusability than we had with older legacy systems.